Biden to say he
Vibhuti
will
Jha, let me
veto
get
it?
Spencer to respond to this. Yeah. Spencer, what's the problem? You know, there are serious allegations against the Biden administration of getting illegals into the country just right ahead of the elections that are slated for November. 2023 saw the highest recorded number of illegals that have entered the United States from the US-Mexico border. What's the problem if the SAVE Act is passed indeed?
That same year also saw the highest level of enforcement, and the surge began under President Trump. And as always, unfortunately, these arguments are made by the current version of the Republican Party in utterly bad faith. Biden was willing to sign on to, and the Democrats in Congress signed on to, an immigration bill that was authored by one of the most conservative members of the Congress. And Trump, in the open, ordered the Republicans in Congress not to agree to something they had already verbally agreed to because it was the best agreement from their point of view they'd ever seen. And he explicitly said in public it was because it would be politically bad for him. And this supposedly terrifying threat of immigrants who are supposedly slaughtering Americans should be allowed to go on for many months until President Trump could benefit from it politically, which shows you the incredible depth of cynicism here. The argument that voters should have IDs seems entirely reasonable on its face, but there are a couple of serious problems here. First of all, despite the merits of that argument, there is virtually no problem with people committing that kind of voter fraud. A very careful study examined millions of votes and found only 30, actually examined all the votes in a recent election. And I believe, if I remember right, found only 30 suspected cases of that kind of voter fraud. So this, in reality, is a negligible problem. And the Republicans don't care about it as any kind of serious threat to the integrity of the vote, which we can also recognize by their willingness to try to overthrow the results of the last election using violence if necessary, and former President Trump's refusal to promise to accept the results of the next election unless he wins it. So the only purpose they have in pursuing this issue is inventing a trumped up issue, if you will, to exploit people's xenophobic fear of immigrants, which they also stoke, and try to use that to mobilize their voters as usual based on fear and bigotry and hatred, unfortunately, in a country whose greatness is built on its openness to immigration. Now, that does not mean, of course, completely open borders. And President Biden, as I say, has been firmly behind one of the strongest immigration enforcement bills ever, only to see it torpedoed by President Trump for cynical political reasons.